Hi, everyone, and welcome to Drive More Demand with Data-Backed Marketing Strategies. I'm Susie Bulk, Marketing Campaign Manager at Acton, and I'm excited to welcome you to today's presentation. I'm joined today by our special guests, Diksha Taneja and Mitchell Hansen from ZoomInfo, along with Carol Atkinson and Becca Fisher from Acton. As others continue to join today's presentation, I wanted to cover some administrative items. First, the webinar is being recorded and you'll receive a link to the on-demand recording and slides within 2 business days of this event. Please feel free to share and forward to your colleagues and peers. Additionally, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to add them to the Q&A box. Note, there is a chat box and a Q&A box. Please post the questions in your handy Q&A section and we'll answer questions throughout the session, but there'll also be some dedicated time at the end. We'll try our best to get through all of them. Lastly, there's a survey at the end of the webinar with a few questions. If you have a moment to answer, I'd love to get your feedback. I just want to get started with some introductions and welcome today's presenters. Diksha, would you like to kick things off?
Sure. Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited about this discussion. It's my favorite topic. I'm Diksha Taneja. I am the Director of Marketing Analytics and Operations here at ZoomInfo. I've been here for a year, but I've been doing this for quite some time now. And what I do is basically optimize marketing campaigns using data and making sure that while we are looking at these amazing insights, we're also making it actionable using my operations side of the skill set. So excited to be here and also excited to learn from all of you guys as to how you've been optimizing your side of the house.
Mitchell, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Mitchell Hansen. I'm Director of Demand Generation here at ZoomInfo. And basically, Diksha and I work together where, I have a team and run a portfolio of marketing programs from like display ads to webinar to direct mail. And really what I'm all about is trying to, find the buyers and make pipeline happen for sales. And, Diksha and I work together to make sure we're doing that in the best way possible.
And Carol?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Carol Atkinson, Director of Marketing Operations here at Acton. I'm newer to the company, but I've been doing lots of different things within marketing for my entire career. And at Acton, I'm really focused on helping our demand gen team kind of take those great leads and MQLs and push them through that marketing funnel and support our sales team to meet our goals and really kind of look at operationally how things are working, what campaigns are performing well, and what we can do just to optimize all the great programs and campaigns that our team's working on.
And last but not least, Becca.
Hi, I'm Becca Fisher. You may have seen me on some of our webinars previously, but I'm the Marketing Campaign Manager at Acton as well. I am responsible primarily for kind of our general nurture tracks of people, looking into marketing automation, making sure that our product is a good fit for their needs, whether that's, generating new leads or customer retention. I run a lot of programs through our syndication vendors as well. And I just kind of help out wherever I can. So I'm excited to be here and share a few of my insights from my campaigns.
All right. Thank you guys for introducing yourselves. We just wanted to get things kicked off by asking you, the attendees, first off, what's your greatest challenge when implementing a data-driven marketing strategy? And 2, how are you looking to use data to drive more demand and improve your marketing strategy this year? So I'll go ahead and launch that poll.
So I have maybe a few insights into, what the top answers might be, but I know personally, I have never struggled really getting the data, but it's always about how do I transfer that into my campaigns, like sort of how Diksha mentioned at the beginning. She doesn't only, get the information, but she finds the best way to apply that data with her team and their campaigns. So I know for me, that's kind of the top challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always, it's sometimes the most time, dedicated thing. And it's, we can gather and get a lot of these reports and data and, automated, but it's who has the time to sit through and really analyze what's working, what isn't, and what kind of changes can we make. So that's, yeah, in my experience, also a very common challenge.
Yeah. Mitchell, do you want to go next? What's your challenge?
You know what, that makes me think of, there's executing, getting in, doing your campaigns. And then there's, getting the data and the metrics and the reporting together. And then there's even analyzing it and understanding what your insights are. Honestly, all three of those, especially with the help of great marketing ops, is not the biggest challenge. Sometimes the biggest challenge is the one that you don't expect that comes right after that, where you've got to take all that and you've got to communicate that up the chain and tell, really, it could be sales, it could be your upper management, anybody, like, why was that good or why was that bad, and how do you characterize all those insights that you have in your head and in your numbers, but then having to do that in a very like TLDR concise way that's going to really resonate and make sense. And that's where I've been tripped up a few times. So maybe we can get into a little bit of tricks on that.
For me, I'd say what I have stumbled upon the most is like, yes, we're able to collect the data and we're doing a bunch of programs, but sometimes those activities are not done in the right order. So sometimes the programs are launched, and the way you're going to analyze the program and the way you're going to understand the impact of it, like that thought process and framework doesn't happen prior to that. And you can like lose time in saying, what was the purpose of this and what are we trying to achieve? So kind of getting that rigor of program management prior to you running the programs is important, because that kind of makes sure then you're collecting the right data, understanding what you're trying to like really move the needle on, and then also makes it easier for the communication piece when you have to like communicate it back to the senior management to understand like, this was the impact we were trying to do, this was the purpose of the program, and this is what it has achieved. Because if you don't do, not all the marketing programs, at least in the short term, would like lead to a direct impact on the revenue. And if you don't do that thinking and that communication ahead of time, like it becomes a challenge to kind of then go ahead and do these things over and over again.
Great. Yeah, thanks for your answers. I'll go ahead and share those results from the rest of the group. So really interesting stuff here. Looks like a majority of us have, challenges applying the data to our marketing efforts. And then for our second question, identifying key buyer touch points as something that you're looking to do next year. So another question to just get us started here, get the conversation rolling. So leadership teams require their marketers to make decisions based off the data provided. In general, what do they expect and how can marketers meet that expectation? In other words, what are they on the hook to know?
Yeah, I can start out. I know personally for me, I'm on the hook, for knowing what's bringing the prospects in, because I am on that demand gen side of marketing. And so I need to know what channels are generating the most leads. But I also, at a more detailed finite level, have to know how do those transfer further down the funnel. So, are they converting to that MQL stage? Are they going to be a good fit when sales is ready for that outreach? So, I've found that I need to know not only, okay, what's bringing them in, but then also what activities later on are leading to those specific conversion points along their journey. So that's for me personally, but I know there's lots of different things that you're required to, as a marketer, to communicate up the chain.
Something that comes up for me a lot is, it's not just did you get your number or not, because there's a number, but there's all these kind of numbers under the numbers. Like, one thing is like, you brought in X amount of, MQLs or pipeline or revenue or whatever. But then how does that break down by channel? Like, did every channel kind of do its job that, we invested certain money into these channels? Did we get the right return per channel? How diverse was that mix of, leads or pipeline? And then also another thing, for us at ZoomInfo right now, we're living in a very much like a multi-product line world. So it's, hey, did we get that number? But then how does that break down? Did this product get what it was supposed to do? Like finance expected X product to bring in X percentage of the whole pie. How did that do? What did we do too much of or not enough? So it's like, it's not enough to get the number, but you've got to like kind of get it in the right way, if that makes sense. And that's something that I kind of look at quite a bit.
Totally agree. Like, I think Mitchell hit it on the head. Like, I feel like it's not just about the key metrics that you're tracking, but also like 3 steps down off those metrics of how you're getting there. And one of the big ones, apart from just the revenue, is the efficiency. Like, how much are you spending to get that number, right? So while you can get that number, right, like, did we spend 3 times the amount that we were budgeted to spend? And while we may have done it because it was what was needed for the hour, like, how are we really reevaluating the programs where we are spending and optimizing through, day in and day out? So I think while they're interested in knowing how we hit it, like that we hit it or not, they're also interested to know how we hit it and what is our plan to make sure that we are constantly optimizing for efficiency, for conversion rate through the funnel. I think I've come from B2C and I've come from B2B. And I think there is also like this, in the B2B world, having that sales and marketing alignment, because from marketing perspective, we can hit our numbers, but we need to be absolutely sure that we're not also wasting sales time by just sending things that may not be mature enough for the sales to have that conversation. So I guess that's all like also boils into the efficiency piece. Like, how are we spending not just the dollar amount upfront, but the resource time through the funnel to get to that revenue piece.
Right.
Yeah, the only other thing I was going to add, Disha, I think we'll talk about that a little bit more further in this webinar, because I think there is always that that ease to just say, hey, marketing, we did our job, and now sales, you do your job. But there really needs to be that constant communication and understanding of, were those good leads, and how did those demo calls, did they show up, what was the conversation, and that really helps us become better marketers when we understand that, and that takes the conversations, right? I think the other point, kind of to your question, Susie, is like kind of higher level, keeping it really simple, but knowing, if it's your C-suite execs who are asking or want to see metrics that really at the highest level, they want to show progress and growth, right? They want to understand how marketing efforts are affecting and impacting overall business. Is the budget being used as efficiently as possible? Are, like Mitchell said, are these channels being properly funded? Are we spending the right amount of money at the right channels, right? And just knowing that if we have all that running efficiently, that's going to help us get better predictability of, future revenue generation and all of that. So I think, that's kind of like the top level. And then, we've all kind of hit on knowing that why behind your numbers. Like, it's great to look at numbers, but we've also got to be able, and I think, your CMO or your VP of marketing is going to want that story too. So being able to tell that, and then even kind of that next level, like Becca, in your case, kind of that content manager, campaign manager, knowing what content is most effective at what stage in your funnel. That's what they're going to want to know and be focused on, so that they're creating the best possible content to help.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Carol, you touched on something really important, and also what we're going to, address next, which is key metrics to track across each stage of the buyer's journey. So to kick us off, are there different KPIs, metrics that marketers should be tracking at various stages of the buyer's journey? We can go ahead and get started with, key metrics from the attraction stage, and, move on to, subsequent parts of the buyer's journey.
Yeah. Oh, Mitchell, I saw you. You want to pick this one off?
Oh, sure, I could. So Susie, the way you kind of ended that one with, like the very first thing you might look at in some of your acquisition campaigns at the very top is one thing that I think is a very underrated metric to look at, and one that we look at in quite a bit, is simply your lead to MQL rate. So, we've got all these activities going, we're generating all these leads. how many of the, like, so we're kind of getting into this, how close to this zero waste, you know, utopia are we getting? You're never going to be all the way there, but, you know, if we can get, like, you know, for us, like 90+% of our leads we're bringing in are MQL eligible, then that's something that's going to set us up down the funnel for better conversion rates at really all stages, and spending less money, you know, thinking about that, what we were just talking about, spending less money to get that result, because we don't have too many of our leads, you know, sloughing off that will not be, that won't be able to be passed. So you don't want to, you don't want to do too much, but you don't want to do too little on that either. So that's kind of the first thing we look at as far as efficiency goes.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's so many different metrics you could track across the buyer journey. The ones that just quickly come to my mind in terms of, you know, the attraction stage are where did they come in, like, originally? Like, did they come in through paid social? Did they come in from, you know, registering for a webinar? So knowing kind of initially what got them to you. And part of the attraction stage is having them come to your website, because that's kind of like where they're going to first learn about you and really be exposed to your brand and what you're trying to help them accomplish in their industry. So I would definitely recommend, you know, you're tracking how many unique visitors that you're getting to your website in that attraction phase, or how many, the variety of leads that are coming in through your different channels. And, you know, how long are they staying on your website, or how long are they looking at different pages? Gives you a really good indication of how engaged, or, you know, where, you know, if they're landing on the pricing page when they're first attracted to you, that might signal to you, oh, wow, they're maybe further along in their research, and maybe they just happen to come across us as a provider. So you would have a different kind of follow-up based on that data for that person.
That's exactly right. Like, I feel like for us also, what you're talking about is like how you could attracted them, like what was the channel mix of how they came. And it is not just the indicator of how you acquired them, but also of a kind of a good intent signal, right? Like if they're coming with more organic, direct, looking for like zoominfo.com or branded, you know, they're a little bit ahead in knowing that ZoomInfo exists, versus if they're coming for a more generic keyword. And those also, and then that coupled with, you know, the channel that they're coming from, like if they're coming from, let's say, an ad that we've put out there on LinkedIn, versus them just finding our website and spending time on our website. Like when we think about consumer journey, like it's 3 buckets, right? There is an introducer bucket, how they got introduced to your brand. There's an influencer bucket as to what all tactics from marketing perspective are we doing to get them engaged and re-engage with our brand. And that's kind of influencer bucket is where you would have a little bit, you know, it could start marketing heavy, but then it becomes more sales focused or outbound outreach focused. And then you have the converter, which is in a B2B organization is a very sales heavy hand. So from like marketing perspective, we're totally in the world of introducer and influencer. There is some, you know, overlay that you do from conversion perspective as well. But like, which places are they coming from? Understanding the cohorts of people, like you said, like, are there people who are spending like 10 minutes of their time versus 20 minutes of the time, tells you where they are in their thinking journey, and hence what kind of touch points do you need to serve them to kind of move them along the way. How they're entering, which places they're entering from, whether it's the pricing page, whether it's the home page, whether it is one of your content pages, totally 3 different like places. Like, are you in the discovery phase versus you're ready to make a decision and you're trying to get the quota? And that's kind of where, when you do the lead generation, making sure that that lead to MQL rate is pretty good. So if you're coming to the pricing page and you're coming from like our branded channel, like there is no reason for you to not MQL them right away. But if you're coming from a content place and you've entered on a very like generic content trying to explore, obviously there's no need for you to do them MQL right away, and kind of figuring out by channel what does that lead to MQL rate to then again make sure the top tracks are aligned. You think about marketing and it seems very simple, but because at the end of the day, we're all trying to do the revenue piece, but there is just so many layers underneath that you want to make sure that you're like tugging the right strings along the way.
Mhm.
Yeah. I see a lot of questions pouring in.
I saw one come in that I thought was really interesting. I thought I might take a stab at it. So there was a question that came in. Actually, I think it was the first question that came in about percentage of TAM that you're actively communicating to. That's a really good one, and something that it can be hard to get at sometimes. So it can be glossed over and forgotten about. That is a great point of alignment for demand gen and product marketing and marketing ops too, I think, together, because product marketing are the ones that also should be caring about that with you. And so the way I think of that is, I think an average is probably about 20 to 25% of your TAM. I think a lot of kind of your average good B2B company can reach. And so then the next challenge after that is what do we need to do to get past that and be like exceptional at that? And the way one of the best tactics or really strategies, I guess, to fully capitalize on that is just looking at if you're in demand gen, looking at all of your channels, looking at your reach by channel. If you think about email marketing, okay, what does our CapDB look like? How much reach do we have in the database per whatever segment TAM? And then, setting a baseline for yourself, knowing that 20 to 25% is kind of where, good or decent happens. And then having really digging down into each channel and being able to maximize your reach within each channel, whether it's paid social, how do we increase our audience? Have we tapped it out from the email marketing side, like what's sitting in your CRM, and then so on and so forth through all of that. Then looking at, things like, impressions or awareness type campaigns, and then being able to put that whole picture together per, however your segmentation strategy dictates and however your TAM breaks down. So, but I think once I kind of figured out that like 20 to 25% was like kind of like where an average good started, then I started getting a picture of here's where I am, and then here's how I can try to get past that using everything I have at my disposal. Hope that helps a little bit. I know it's a tough one to get at sometimes, but that's once I figured out like what a nice like baseline was, and then figured out different tactics about how I and my team could affect that really helped a lot. So if you're under 25%, okay, now you need to do some work on that. But bring your partners from product marketing in with you, because they should be doing a lot of that upfront research, I think, and then great, you have a point of alignment. Now you're working together.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for answering that one. I don't have anything to add. I think you did nail that. I did see one come through, and it had to do with, what should the conversion rate be from, MQL to SQL. And I know we've touched on, lead to MQL, focusing on that as well. And honestly, it's going to be an answer you probably won't like, but it depends, right? So what you have to kind of do is figure out your costs associated with these different conversion points, and figure out like, what does that conversion rate have to be in order to meet my revenue goals? Because it's going to depend on your industry. It's going to depend on, how you're tracking as a business yourself. And so the best idea is to start with a few benchmarks and figure out how much you need to hit for revenue, and then figure out, okay, well, I need to, if I get this amount of leads in, this percent needs to convert to MQL, this convert to SQL to get our pipeline, and then this is how much we have to close with sales. So I would say just start looking at the numbers by channel and figuring out the costs associated with those, and then figuring out that percentage that you have to get from stage to stage. Mm-hmm. I don't know if anyone else has a more prescriptive approach. I know that was kind of general, but.
I mean, I think one of the things that I'd say is for us, like, it's kind of also like somewhere in like the target setting stage, right? Like that you're talking about, just seeing like, what do we need to get to from stage to stage? So one of it is like what you're doing today, like what are we doing today? What is the top down conversion rate? And then if you were to get to a certain number, what is the bottoms up number that you need to get to using the current metrics, and then see where is the optimization you can build. Also then do benchmarking against the data that are available tomorrow, see if there are areas of optimization, if there is a mix that you need to kind of adjust. If a certain channel has a higher MQL, SQL, all the way into the ACV conversion rate, like how do you expand that channel, because that will move the needle for the overall business, so, and then also to know like when to MQL and when to SQL, depending on different channels, right? So I think it is part of it, like relook at the funnel in a little bit of more granularity than you're doing, do bottoms up, top down, do top down and then do bottoms up to get to a number, and then make adjustments to see what works for you, and then put some benchmarks against what the industry is doing and try to get to those numbers and see what tactics you would employ to have like a point effect on each one of those conversion rate. And also like not everything will rise at the same level, right? Like if you may increase the MQLs, you will kind of see a drop in SQL. So be also mindful of that. Not all metrics move in the same direction, especially if you're moving things at the top of the funnel. You may have to compromise giving away some of the bottom of the funnel conversion metrics, as long as the net is still positive.
Yeah, definitely. I like the bottom up approach, and something along the lines of like the lead to MQL. The way we kind of qualify that in marketing is we use a lead scoring model. And so once they hit that threshold, there's a trigger, in the system that passes over to our SDR team that says, okay, they've like met these certain criteria, like they're ready for some outreach, whatever that might look like for your business. And I know that to Deeksha's point about, okay, maybe we're increasing the MQL volume too much. The great part about, using a lead scoring system is that you can turn that down. And that's a good way to turn down that volume so that you're not passing like the wrong people too quickly through that. So that's just one tip of advice, is to kind of figure out how you're scoring and qualifying those people early on.
Yeah. And Becca, I would add to that I think, when you get those questions as a marketer from your sales team, or you hear those comments of, oh, like, yeah, we got a lot of MQLs, but, the quality wasn't there. Well, that's a great way to just stop and pause and say, okay, well, let's dig into a little bit of the channels. And did they all come from, was it a syndication partner? Was it a paid social? And, because that's in my experience been, oh, we tried something new, right? We tried a new channel or tried a new paid program that we thought would be, the right target audience. And then we get that feedback from sales. Well, the great way to, make a change, if you get that feedback and your sales team's really saying, they're not quite there, then go back to that lead scoring and turn that down for that particular activity within your lead score, and, adjust it and see if that helps. There should be a way you can get to that sweet spot number if you just continue to have those conversations with your sales team.
We just had a question on that, kind of, or really a statement that come in on that, just talking about adding a layer of grading in, or adjusting the weighting instead of manipulating the score. So I think that's a great point, and I think it's important to remember that most scoring models, when we talk about scoring, really it's in most of the time when we say that, we're including it's the score of engagement level and it's the grade of fit. And so that's like from the Eloqua kind of school, it's like the co-dynamic model. And so you can kind of play with both of those depending on what you feel like, and you've discussed with sales, gotten that feedback loop going. And so then you can maybe it's on the fit side, or maybe it's on the kind of engagement readiness side. But just remember that you do have both of those levers to play with, and you can kind of look at what might be kind of tight already, and then what might have a little bit room to tighten up if you do have that great problem of bringing in too many leads, but and then sales maybe not having enough headcount to have throughput on all of those. Great. Now you tighten that up, and you're hitting your number right on the dot, but you've also inherently raised the quality of everything. And so it's great. It's a great place to be, because you have options on how you want to kind of play that situation out.
Yeah, great discussion there. And I think, it leads us well into our next topic, which is, measuring performance and identifying the gaps in your marketing channels. So let's kick this off with, what are the key benchmarks that you're tracking, how are you comparing your own organization's performance to competitors in your industry?
I guess the first one is, well, there's two that come to mind first. The first one is kind of a more top of funnel thing, or a kind of a more like earlier thing where it's like, it's just like what share of voice or share of impressions, like how much are we dominating our target market right now? What I love about being at a company like ZoomInfo is that we do have enough kind of name recognition and resources that we're able to kind of dominate our kind of primarily desired segments. And so if we're not doing that, then that's something that we need to change and be aware of, whether it's a new campaign, new channel, new program. We want to make sure that we are using everything at our disposal to be able to kind of capture the lion's share of the attention for that segment. So that's one. So because if we're not doing that, then we kind of need to rethink a lot of things. And the other one that I look at a lot, of course, is just, this is one for all of you demand gen marketers out there that want to have a great relationship with finance, which is so important and so underrated, I think, and kind of an afterthought sometimes. You should be setting up your goals so that you are inherently, based on the budget they're giving you, going to knock out like, a solid ROI, like 4x or better number. So, that's something where I don't care what other companies out there, if you are in B2B demand gen and you can put up like really solid ROI, then you're going to have a good time. And finance is going to like you. They're going to want to fund what you want to do, as long as you're able to kind of start with the end in mind. And this is how much budget I'm asking for, because that revenue number you want is X. And all I want is X percent, Y percent of X to go get that. And they're going to see, oh, great. Well, Mitchell's signing up to go knock out like 4 or 5X ROI on this. So what you've done is you've created a machine where they put $1 in, you give them $4 or $5 back in whatever your sales cycle is. And that is a great machine that they'll probably want to put a lot of dollars into.
Totally. Going back to like the benchmarking for us, like I would say there is like more formal benchmarking that you use, like the Forresters of the world, to kind of say what is the industry benchmark, which are the key, micro industries that you work in, and how are they doing through the funnel. So you do that if you have the, if the organization that you work for allows for it. It's a lot of investment, but you also have to be very cognizant of how you're leveraging that data to really see how you're creating those. So taking that more of formal or a standard data and making it more customizable to your organization. So that is like one part, right? But you kind of take reference points, or you get the white papers, Gartners of the world, and see how are some of those industry, how are your competitors like ranking against some of the things that you're playing in. Then the second one is more like actually what's happening in the market. Like if you are competing in the paid campaigns, right? Like you're competing with your competitors on bidding on like different areas, whether it's like the landing pages that they are showing up for, whether the amount that they're spending for just general the keywords that you play in, but also your branded keywords, like what's going on over there and what is their message to the audience. And then how are they getting people to their website, and what does the landing page look like? I think it's also, benchmarking aside, it's also good to kind of see that from, sometimes you have to like, use a tactic to combat it truly by like just changing your ad, but also know how, if you need to do some sort of product messaging differently based on the things that they're attacking, because they're seeing things on G2 and other places about some reviews, right? So keeping ear to the ground using, that methodology. So between the two of them, keeping like more benchmark, which is standardized, and then using your day-to-day, the marketing tactics that you're leveraging, and seeing how you're seeing the bidding in the market to then say, what are we trying to do? What are the bids? What is our, ceiling of how much we can spend against these tactics? Those are like two methodologies that we kind of use on a day-to-day basis to optimize our funnel.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the kind of peer-to-peer review sites like G2 and Trust Radius, and those are also good if you're if you've got a KPI or even just an organizational goal, improving your customer service or, something that you're looking for. Well, great. What are our competitors? Like, are the consumers out there, loving one of our competitors for this? Well, check out those sites and see, you can get a really good sense of, your competitors' strengths from just utilizing the information on those sites. So use that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just like to kind of add to what everyone's been talking about, looking at the external benchmarks. When I'm working with content providers or content syndication providers, I do ask them, what content do you see resonating? Because for me, performance, can definitely be the money, the dollars, the number, but I also want to make sure I'm providing the right value to those people who are coming through. And so I want to pick the types of assets and the types of topics that they're really hungry to learn more about, because that's going to initially create that really good relationship up front, and then hopefully, cascade further down in their nurture journey. So definitely, if you work with any of those, talk, with the contacts you have there and ask, hey, what are people in our space talking about right now? Because if it's working for them, it's likely gonna, transfer over to you as well as a business.
Yeah, really good points there, everyone. Thank you. So in what ways can you segment the data across your marketing channels? Can you share any anecdotes or scenarios that have been more successful than others at your organization?
Yeah, when I think of segment data, I'll let the rest of the presenters kind of touch maybe more on like the channel aspect of that for reporting. But when I think of segmenting data, I think of how am I segmenting our prospect base and who's like in our system. And I think about, not only their job title, what industry they're from, because those two, at least for our business, helps us define and figure out what type of messaging and what types of the priorities that they might be having on a day-to-day. So, a VP of marketing would have a different priority than, say, like someone like me, a campaign manager. The VP of marketing is going to want to know, okay, how does this solution help ROI or paint that picture, that story of success? And then the person like me who is day-to-day in like marketing automation would want to know, how functional is it? Does it integrate with, other things I'm using? So I would definitely segment depending on where that person is at in their level, or like what level they are at the organization. But then, industry as well. Someone in a manufacturing industry is going to have a different priority. Maybe it's, getting those new leads of new vendors to work with, whereas someone in a financial services industry might be really focused on that client retention and that loyalty. And so those are two completely different messaging frameworks. So when I'm segmenting that data of the people coming in, I want to make sure I'm aligning that to the content that I'm putting out in my campaigns.
Becca, I would add on that too, if that segmentation is a priority too from your business, right? That you're going after a new industry or targeting companies with a specific revenue range, making sure that you can segment your data to show that and show, where your gaps are and where you're winning within those different industries or different, company sizes. All that data, we have, it's just a matter of how can you, show that in a meaningful way that's going to get to, are we making progress in this? Is this a whole new segment that we're going after? Your boss and your boss's boss are going to want to know, how are we doing there? Are we making progress? And how does that compare to, maybe another segment that we kill it at, right? Like, how do we get that, that level to this new segment that we're maybe going after or looking at differently?
Totally agree with both of those. I'm digging to try to find something additional. First thing that jumps out is just the whole notion of psychographics. You know, and nowadays it's a little bit easier than it used to be back when I was coming up to get, you know, you got the demographics, the firmographics, and then the technographics started to become a little bit easier. Now the psychographics, like what is your mindset right now, is kind of the toughest thing to get at, I think. There's a few ways you can have a little cheat code for that, like intent data is a really good way to address that. But then that also leads to, you know, going down that train of thought, I thought, you know, being able to measure the amount of like, for everything you're bringing in, how much of the active demand are we bringing in, and how can I show that we are capturing a lot of that? That's a tougher one where, you know, I kind of go around to someone like Deeksha to kind of help me sort that out and paint that picture. But that's kind of what jumps out at me. And additionally, I did mention this earlier, but especially if you're in a multi-product line situation, which ZoomInfo has added a lot of products to the product families to the product line over the last year and a half. But that's also very important too, just to be able to just slice it that way. All those different products are going to have like different, you know, ASPs, conversion rates. The whole like sales velocity formula could be totally different for a new product. So it's important to be able to slice and dice that, because you want to, they really want that to be their own funnel. So whenever you're doing reporting back on that, and then what's going to lead into forecasting, you're going to forecast those different. You might need, you know, more at the top to get to the end result in one product line than you might be another. So that's, I mean, gosh, even more than channel sometimes these days, I'm slicing things up by product line when I'm doing a lot of my reporting.
Yeah, totally. And each of the product, depending on how mature your company is in that product, could have totally a different ROI, right? Like we may be getting the same amount of like leads because it's under the ZoomInfo umbrella, but what it's really turning into revenue could be a longer cycle. Also not because it's a longer cycle from the person who's buying perspective, but also from our company's maturity perspective to be able to sell to that audience, right? Like marketing is generally ahead of sales in a lot of ways. Like we'll go and start talking about it, and sales needs to be like trained and adopted and not go to the easier thing to sell, because it's easy for them to sell that is tried and tested and they're doing it again and again. It's difficult to sell a new product, and how it really adds, how do you add it as an additive on top of the product that you're selling. For us, the other thing that we look at beyond like the channel, the title, the industry is the size of the company, which is enterprise versus small, SMB versus mid-market, right? Those also will have a big impact on how you're converting through the funnel. So while the intent is there, if you're part of an enterprise, inevitably the cycle will be a lot longer than, let's say, an SMB. But if you're, as a company, you're trying to grow your enterprise like segment, right? Like then know that how much percentage of those have you brought through marketing channels, and that will not show up in your within the month or even T-1, T-2 conversion rate. It may take almost 3-4 months, and then just kind of be mindful of how much you're growing that segment and not be looking at the short-term stuff, but like long-term, how that really fits into the company strategy.
That's a good one. Yeah, diversity is a great thing. Like, you know, you want to have your kind of smaller deal size, 30-day close stuff, but at the same time, you want to have a lot of that, like, you know, 7-figure deal, 12 to 18 month stuff out there too. So you've got, the more diversity you have, you know, you're kind of making inroads into, you know, SMB, enterprise, and so, you know, you're able to kind of do a lot of those things at once, and so you're having a lot of short-term success, but you're also, you know, you're putting stuff in the bank for long-term success as well. So yeah. Diversity and options is important. Yeah.
Yeah. And knowing, I think it's good to like start off with marketing, but knowing what kind of traction we're getting in each of those segments may also lead into how you're organizing your sales organization to cater to the demand that you're generating, right? So if right now everything goes into the same pool of people who are working those leads, but enterprise needs to be treated differently, or a certain product needs to be treated differently, like having that information and segmenting your data with that will give more insights as to why you need to like have that change management within the organization itself to then, manage and grow from there.
Yeah, we just got a question in the chat, so I'll read it to you. Would you go as far as to consider the cost of work hours for campaigns when calculating ROI, or take that out of the equation and chalk it up to operating costs? Do you have any input on that?
I mean, personally, I would, you know, chalk it up to operating costs, but keep an eye on it. Like you know, and as far as like marketing operations, like that is something, you know, I look at and make sure like, great, we, you know, launch new messaging and we, you know, put it everywhere on our website and all of our digital ads and all this, but like, you know, how much of an effort did that cost us to, you know, did we have to work with an agency or freelancers or, you know, all of those costs, like it is good to keep that in mind. But personally, I've kept that separate, but that's just what I've done in the past.
Same. I think you should track, really, I think you should track it both ways. You run into this a lot with the whole notion of SDRs and how do we count the cost of an SDR onto as an extension of our marketing program. That's great because they kind of invented two different metrics. There's ROI and then there's ROMI. And so when you're talking ROMI, you don't have to worry about anything fully burdened, how many hours and all that stuff. It's just straight program costs. And so you've got one set of, numbers and benchmarks, it's that, but then at the same time, you really should, I totally agree, Carol, like you should be tracking both because you don't want to have a surprise there. And if someone, maybe finance wants to have a conversation about that.
I know the finance will have a conversation.
Exactly. You want to know, like you want to roll into that meeting knowing everything about that. You might want to have a pre-meeting before you have that meeting about like, okay, how do we feel about that? And then also it's like, there's a little bit of sales and marketing alignment there too, because, sales is the one that's trying to do headcount planning, how many SDRs. You don't want to have too few, but you also don't want to have too many for what your goals might be. So I think there are two different metrics. We do kind of use them interchangeably, but the knowledge is power in that respect, where you kind of know tracking both, and then you know what to use given the situation and who you're talking to. Like, yeah, that's how I look at it.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So, I think the next question that we'll tackle here is, we've talked a lot about interoperational, cooperation. What are some ways to integrate marketing and sales data to make sure that there are no data silos in our organizations?
I think at the basic level, we need to have agreed funnel that we all look at. And these are the 2 or 3 metrics that marketing is getting judged on and sales is getting judged on. And there is no disconnect on that, on how we are looking at those metrics. Like those are the standardized ways that we now getting to individual metrics, which are more marketing focused, let's say MQL, like Mitchell can have his own number of, cuts that he's looking at to get to that MQL level. And then when you're looking about how many of those are converting into different stages of the funnel, and our SDR team or the SDR leadership have their own more focused on the people component of it, who's working these leads, how they're coming to, but also having which marketing channels they're coming from. Those are the ones where I think we can be creative and how we are looking at our data, but at the same time, just know that we always have to go back to the basics and have to go back to the same standardized metrics. For us, I think one of the things that works for us is, and I don't know if I've never had this before at any other company. So if it happens at your company, is great. You're doing a good job. We do everyday sales and marketing alignment stand-up. It happens every single day. We go through all of the different things that are happening from the leads perspective and everything that's happening from the conversion, at least the first 2 conversion steps perspective. And it's an honest discussion about what marketing is doing. It's honest discussion of how sales is approaching it. Sometimes marketing is doing way more than sales can handle and vice versa. And given that meeting that we have, it makes sure that there are no surprises for any of us. Also, it is a place for us to say, if you're doing a new program and it will have an impact on any of our key metrics. So let's say conversion rate may be impacted because all of a sudden I'm going to run this campaign and I know we're going to get a lot of MQLs, but they are going to be like Mitchell was saying, for a specific product that's new and it would have it may not convert at the same level. Having that alignment just makes sure that there is like a trust built between marketing and sales of that we are in this together, and at the end of the day, we're trying to make it better, like outcome. It helps with making sure that the talk tracks that you have for those kind of leads we are aligned on. But as I said, like going back to the question that you have, like having those standardized metrics and seeing how those are moving when you make these changes, and having that alignment meeting with your sales, like kind of removes like those data silos. I'm not saying we are perfect. We still have those situations where marketing wants to look at things a certain way and sales want to look at things a certain way. But I think we're doing a pretty good job of like keep the conversation going and making sure that we are tweaking and modifying our process as we go along the way.
Yeah, that I love that everyday meeting that we have. It's at 1 p.m. Pacific every single day. It's arguably my favorite meeting of the
It is
week,
my favorite too.
And we have such a great rapport that we've established by having that meeting. And one thing I love about our sales team, especially, shout out Brian Vidal and all his team, is that he is such a good example, because we have such a great relationship, all of us really, sales and marketing, in that meeting, that each of us, our teams individually, we always look at ourselves first on, okay, this thing isn't great. There's no finger pointing that ever happens that I've ever seen. And it's always like they're looking at themselves. We're looking at ourselves. They're looking at themselves on saying, this is on us. What can we do to correct that? And we're always looking at ourselves to solve it before we're saying, you need to do this. But when it does come down to that, we're all kind of pretty aligned on like, okay, well, we know that this team or this side of the house has to do that. And so, but we wouldn't have that if we didn't meet every single day. And being at ZoomInfo, it's the biggest company I've ever worked at and doing the biggest volume that I've ever been a part of. And so when you're doing that many, it's thousands a day, you have to meet every day, because if you skip one day, that's a lot that is not getting talked about. It could go off the rails. So I really love that situation. So especially if you're a bigger, Acton, I'd say, is that size too, where, it wouldn't be too much to have that every single day. So, but that could be good for any company though, too, I think.
Yeah. If anything, like just talk more often. Don't be afraid of each other. I've been part of marketing orgs where, we sit right next to the SDR team and like nobody talks. We just exchange emails. Like, stop doing that. Go over and talk, find a way to connect, and have that more the frequent conversation. If you can't do it every day, if that's not feasible, it should be a couple times a week, and find those meetings, invite, just show up to those meetings where they're connecting and talking about things, because I would put a bet on, the fact that there's probably some point about what marketing is doing happening in those meetings without somebody from marketing being present to answer those questions and talk through what's going on.
Yeah, we Acton meet weekly with our SDR team, and I find it extremely valuable, just because I've gotten so many qualitative insights from them that I can't get through just looking at the Salesforce CRM dashboards that I have, especially for like content syndication. So I was hearing, this syndication provider, the leads, once they MQL, typically remember the asset they downloaded way more than this program. And so for me, that's really helpful to know that, okay, this vendor does a really good job of like outreach after the fact or following up with the asset. Another example that comes to mind that was pretty recent was I was asking a question in the form, like you've seen the questions, hey, would you like to speak to an expert type questions and forms? And it was just a simple yes, no. But the way we phrased it was, are you actively looking for marketing automation solutions? Because I thought that would be a great qualifier, because it's like, okay, I can captivate them in a good, timely manner. Those are the like leads that, they can prioritize the follow-up for. So they would go into this auto MQL versus going through all of the nurture stuff. Mm-hmm. And what we learned was we were qualifying them too early. Even if they are looking at that solution, they still needed a little bit more of some engagement. Some engagement with us. And so for me, that takeaway was, wow, okay, let's adjust the scoring a little bit, like downgrade if someone answers yes, so that they have to do a little bit more with us before that outreach. So yeah, definitely recommend meeting and seeing those qualitative insights.
That's a great insight. I'm actually actively asking Mitchell to reevaluate our content syndication scoring to get that to convert. And again, like that has come from the sales team. Like we sit with them and we're going through individual programs and they're like, okay, fine, these are converting at a low rate. Like we're going to still work them if you're going to send it, but I think our efforts will be better utilized and we'll get a higher throughput if we use the same amount of SDR time into some other campaign, right? So it's for greater good at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, it's the same like conversion metrics. Because we are looking at the conversion metrics, you just cut it by like at the end of the day, like 3 or 4 like cuts of every metric. We can have 1,000 other key points, but you go back to the basics and cut 3-4 times and you'll get an answer of where you need to optimize.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, guys. So we have time for a couple Q&As. So I'll start off with one here. How has the pandemic affected any marketing you've done, and how did you have to pivot to meet those needs? And if we could tie those in, respectively with data, that would be great.
Yeah, when I saw that question come through, the first thing I thought of was like, and this is almost every single B2B company, the event strategy was like, it was all up in the air. Danny, our awesome events manager, he had the most amazing 2020 events plan all lined up to go. Of course, that everything got thrown for a loop on that. So it was a big part of our mix, and so we had to kind of reevaluate how we were going to go about that. And we did what a lot of other companies do, is we kind of doubled or tripled down on webinars. Which was great. We were kind of all aligned on what we wanted to do there, but we weren't really sure on if we could scale it up, how much that would cost, how sales would feel about that. Sales love us to be at the at events, but it all turned out fine because we were able to rally around a plan. But yeah, it was a big part of our mix where we had to kind of use another channel to kind of cover on a lot of that. But it's great because hey, awesome, we just tripled the size of our webinar program. And so it was kind of an interesting, coincidental forcing function to do that. But that was probably the big one for us and most other companies, I'd say.
And cut the cost. So it became really efficient.
Oh, that's true. Yes. Yeah, they webinars tend to be a little bit cheaper than going and putting a booth at Dreamforce or something like that. But it's a different motion. So you got to get used to that. It's luckily those translate pretty well. So but yeah, hey, we're used to it by now, so that's nice.
I would say too, direct mail, if that's a motion that you do, B2B or B2C, is a challenge when you don't actually have that physical office that somebody is going to, that you're mailing something to. How do you get around that? And whether you adjust your lead form and or way to send somebody something to a different address for them to give you that information, or like Mitchell said, you pivot that and you put money elsewhere. Again, look at your data and see what other channels are performing, and maybe you just take a pause and put some of that money into a different channel for the time being, knowing that you don't have a way to perhaps mail and get that direct mail piece in front of your customer or your prospect.
Yeah, it took a definitely different level of creativity on you can't just send some really cool like handmade who knows what to your prospects, or really even just like a nice high value offer from like an ABM side of things. But so you're kind of relegated to like gift cards in some ways, but you can still make that really cool if you have to step up your level of creativity. Shout out to Lauren on our team, who's done a great job at that. And you just, you have to really win them over without being able to send something right to their office. And then also you have to go a little bit uncomfortable and like, hey, do I ask them for their home address, or do I make that a thing? And then, you kind of get that down, and that's part of your playbook now. And it's like, oh, awesome. Well, we just kind of like developed a new kind of muscle in that respect. And then we're able to kind of take advantage of that as, no matter what, for forever, hopefully.
Yeah, so we've almost reached time here, but I do want to end with one final question. If you do have to hop off, please remember that there is a survey that we'd like you to fill out. We'd very much appreciate it. But for our presenters, just, if you could go around quickly and just what's one piece of advice you would like to leave our audience with today?
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, never hesitate to try something new. Always test things, adjust, after benchmarking your campaigns or your programs. Just don't be afraid to try new things. I mean, I feel like things are constantly shifting now in the marketing world. And so there's not, one thing that's always the best thing to do. So just always experiment. Have fun as a marketer.
Yeah, I think I'm going to write on that. Like, have fun with data, get creative with data. Like, there are no rules when you can, like, the way you can look at things, but know when to balance with being creative and going back to the basics, right? And then sometimes analysis paralysis is a thing. Like, you can go in circles and try to, like, look at a data point and say, this works, but if it doesn't work in the overall picture, know when to stop it and go back to the basics.
I would say don't underestimate the value of your alignment with the marketing finance alignment. That's huge. I'll even throw a bonus one is don't underestimate the effectiveness of like your unit economics to validate your efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my last one, we didn't really touch on this much, but just on the data side, don't make decisions with bad data. Like bad data meaning incomplete data. Yeah. Make sure your numbers are reliable. A good marketing ops person is gonna have a close eye on that and let you know when you've got third-party data that's not matching or coming through properly. But anytime you kind of see something that stands out, make sure to question it and ensure that it's coming through, with complete accurate data.
Great. Thank you all so much. And thank you to our audience for attending today's session. We hope that you all continue to have fun with data. So until next time, bye everyone.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.